Hello, Internet, and welcome to my review for Fairy Tail episode 302. When we last left off, the end of the Nine-Heart battle happened, as everyone worked through their Historias. At the same time, Jalal took out Nine-Heart, with Grand Chariot, which led to some nice scenes as people all kind of, accepted a short lull in the battle. Meanwhile, back in Magnolia, Natsu and Lucy are moving out with Brandish to try to negotiate with August as thanks for everything, as one part apology for Brandish's hatred of Lucy, and as a thank you for taking care of her while she was in Magnolia. And also, the battle in the north is coming, as Irene is here and has melted all the snow in a heartbeat. So before we get into the review itself, just a reminder, I have my Spring 2019 anime review straw poll in the description down below. Spring season starts in 2 days, so fill that out, please. Anyway, moving right on into tonight's episode. So we're gonna start, normally do my videos on a, as things happen in the episode basis, but just because of the way this episode is really kind of scattershot. We'll touch in on Team Natsu, and then we'll go to, Mount Zonia for a second, and then we'll go back to Team Natsu, and then we'll go back to, the Lumen Histoire Hall, and then it's just all over the place a little bit, so we're gonna focus on each location in turn. We're gonna start with, Natsu and the gang meeting August. Before they do that, though, Mest shows up, because as we kind of established, last week, Mest is super untrusting of Brandish right now. And I do like Mest's influence as a more, realist perspective compared to Lucy and Natsu's blind faith in Brandish. Because, Mest kind of has a point. I understand why Natsu and Lucy trust Brandish at this point. And given everything they know about Brandish, they're probably right to trust her. But given everything that Mest knows, he's right to doubt her. Because Mest does not have all this backstory with Layla. He hasn't really encountered Brandish all that much. All he knows is Brandish is a member of the Spriggan 12. Why the fuck are we trusting her? Now, we'll see how far his doubt goes next week. I'm not going to spoil that. But then, it's the moment you have all been waiting for. Giant Happy! It's the greatest. I love Giant Happy so much. He's such a good boy. Happy deserves to be as big as he wants. It's really cute. Brandish is right. Giant Happy is super cute. And then we leave them for a little while. We come back. In the middle of all this, super, serious stuff going on in Mount Zonia, we have the super light and fluffy stuff going on top of Happy. As Natsu is getting a giant head thanks to Brandish. Brandish is messing around with Lucy's boob size. It's a big comedy bit. And I was going to be critical of just how sharp that contrast is. Even for Fairy Tail, that's always been really big on the mixing the comedy with the darkness and all. But honestly, it's all worth it for that moment when they realize August is here. Oh, fuck. That's just a great moment as Natsu, Lucy, and Mest just feel the magic power. But they go down to August, and Brandish is like, hey, these guys were, nice to me, I'm all for Alvarez, but, let's not kill them? And August is like, if you ain't gonna kill them, you're a traitor. And that's really all we see of that plot line, so we'll get more of that next week. Judging by the next time preview, there's some big stuff gonna be happening there next week, but it's a lot of little things, over there. Meanwhile, in the Lumen Histoire hallway, nothing's happening again. We were first introduced to this 2 episodes ago. And we're still here. And I think we're done with, I think this plot line will be over by the big moment next week. The next time preview slightly alludes to, not enough to spoil it at all. But, in this plotline, maybe this is right to tell Kana that attacking her isn't actually hurting her, it's helping her, because it'll free her from not Lumen Histoire, from the, I guess it is Lumen Histoire, but the Resurrection Lacrima is what I was thinking of. But her bringing up Zara doesn't really make a lot of sense here. Like, it's just kind of a throwaway line that goes on too long. Though we'll see if it stays that way later on. It might just be to keep Zara in mind. She'll be slightly important later. Anyway, now we're headed towards Mount Zonia. And seeing Sabretooth... So, one of the first things we see on Mount Zonia is Sting is looking all depressed. Because, he just got his ass whooped by Alvarez. And so Rogue and Yukino, or Rogue tries to get Sting's morale back, and then Yukino, slaps him to do it. Because, stop fucking lying around, we have a fight to win. And that's a great scene and all, it's a great, especially if you're, a Yukino Sting shipper, which I'm not really, but whatever. It's still, a great moment of them all, coming back together as a guild stronger than they were before. But I feel like we skipped a part. Because last time I checked, they were still crucified by Alvarez. Now, they're free? That just seemed a little odd, I don't know, that just doesn't really make sense. It makes sense, it's just an odd thing to skip. It's odd to skip the moment where they're freed. And we see, flashbacks to them being freed. There's a second where we have a quick flashback of Gajeel talking to them about something. Or don't get crucified or something. As Gajeel's flashing back to what he did to Team Shadowgear way back during Phantom Lord. Get to that in a hot sec. But yeah, it's just... It felt like a flashback to something we were supposed to have seen, but that we had not seen. Unless I just completely forgot. If I completely forgot, please feel free to roast me in the comments. That's my bad if I forgot, but I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Anyway, speaking of the callback to Team Shadowgear, Gajeel v. Bloodman, here we go. Yeah, so I love, Gajeel specifically calling it a bad memory. There's just so much Gajevi moments in this chapter, or Gale, if you're an old fogey like I am. Yeah, I still remember back when they were called Gale. Yeah. So yeah, that's happening. Meanwhile, Crime Source Sierra shows up. But instead of I think the rest of the group besides Angel and Cobra joined the battle. But they're still in Olympia because Cobra is still motion sick. And Angel starts shooting this fucking laser beam into the Alvarez forces. And that's all we get of them. Also, Irene tells us that Acnologia is on his way to Mount Zonia, because, of course he is, One thing to say about Irene, she really does not do a whole lot to justify her she has 4 or 5 minutes of screen time, I think, in this episode. That might be an overstatement, but still. It's way too much, considering how little she does. She, tells us Acnologia is coming. She goes on this long rant about the 4 guests. I'll talk about that in a little bit, because that's a manga thing is incredibly unwieldy in the anime. It just doesn't really work at all. But I'll talk about that in a quick second. But anyway, once Zareth realizes what Irene has done to Mount Zonia, that look of fear that Zareth has of her, holy shit, she just did this. I'm a firm believer that Mashima is so good at building up villains. It's one of his greatest talents, is making truly threatening villains. We'll see later on his issues with the follow-through, but we'll get to that later on. Anyway, the Gajeel Bloodman fight. I love it. I'm a huge Gajeel fan, for one thing. But, we've got Bane Particles, which Gajeel is immune to somehow, thanks to his lungs of iron, I guess. We see how much Gajeel cares about everyone. Early Gajeel would not have given a shit if everyone got Bane Particles and died. But, especially how much he cares about Levy. Of course he does. And we see how much Levy cares about Gajeel in return, refusing to leave him to fight Bloodman alone. And as we learned, not having any kind of protection against the Bane Particles, because the mask doesn't work, as we learn at the end. But anyway, so, we need to talk about something real fast. It was big in the manga. And at least some awkwardness this episode I kind of already alluded to with the 4th guest. But at this point in the manga, from the 7 stars of Jalal's final spell against Nine Hearts, the manga was doing this thing where the chapter titles were doing this weird countdown thing, where every chapter title contained a number somewhere in it, counting down to 0. We see that with the 7 stars of Grand Chariot. When Gajeel, at the end of last week, referred to their group as the 6 monsters. Even Levy comments on how, like, he has to really stretch the definition of monster to count her as one of them, to be 6. And then it comes in this episode as well, where we see Sabretooth mentions the first meal we've had in 5 days. There's this wonky math required to make Acnologia the 4th guest by, like, they combine Sabretooth and Blue Pegasus as one guest, Irene does. Bloodman all of a sudden has these 3 seals that aren't mentioned anywhere until he's already on the 3rd one. And it's just kind of weird, and they're all remnants of this that don't really work in the anime. But anyway, with this, we find out that Bloodman is an Aetherius, which could have been assumed once we found that he would make the Bane particles, but he confirms it himself later on. Which is nice, that curses have not been entirely forgotten. And specifically, he can use all 9 of the Demon Gate's curses. Or 8 curses and 1 demon-slaying magic, but whatever. Yeah. So he does that. We see, I think, Keys' curse. We see some Ice Devil slaying magic. Most importantly, we see Tora Fuzar's water curse that Gajeel and Levy faced during Tartaros arc. And I love Levy already having a counter strategy to this, because, like, she's seen it before. This is old news for her. She puts a hole in the floor, and it's all gone. That was a great moment. A standout Levy moment. But then, we see some more stuff. Some weird stuff that the anime doesn't quite do a good job of explaining, like that Vortex of the Dead thing. I'm not quite sure how they got out of that. It's all of a sudden Gajeel couldn't reach Levy, and then he could, and then they were gone, but it was a really big thing that they were gone, because Bloodman was like, oh, they can't be gone? That's not how the spell works, but it is apparently. I don't know. The important thing is, Levy reveals that her mask never worked, and that Bane particles come in through the skin, but she did it just to save Gajeel. I love them so much. I love Gale so much. They are the greatest. Anyway, that ends the episode. It's a great cliffhanger. But this episode was more than a little scattered, as I kind of alluded to at the start of the video. You know, there were 3 different main plot lines with Team Natsu, with Gajeel v. Bloodman, and with Irene kind of, like, monologuing in the distance. Definitely felt like this episode could have been streamlined some way. I'm not quite sure where, because that cliffhanger was just perfect. But, like, maybe... Probably, so I alluded to there's this big moment coming in the Natsu and August plotline that's coming next week. But, like, maybe given how little Irene did this episode, they could have cut out most of the Irene stuff and ended on that cliffhanger over there, and then have the 2 cliffhangers kind of in conversation with each other. But I don't know. That might not have worked. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not a professional adapter. Anyway, the actual stuff we got was all pretty good. Some of the stuff with Bloodman, especially the whole Vortex of Death thing, as I mentioned, was a little hard to understand, but it was still good. Most of the fight was really cool, as we see Gajeel have to basically fight the entire 9 Demon Gates with just Levy at his side, and he actually holds his own. Especially the best part, as I mentioned, was that Tora Fuzar bit, where we see just how much Levy has grown, as she, like, instantly works out a counter strategy. Meanwhile, Natsu's gang has ended up right in front of August, where he is more than happy to strike them down. So I cannot wait for that stuff to go down next week. We'll see. That's a big moment there. And the Irene stuff and the Kana stuff is happening, I guess. Not much there. Next time, Gajeel fights Bloodman to save Levy is the only way to stop the Bane particles, while negotiations continue to sour, and Irene changes everything. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like, or subscribe, or throw the straw poll down below, please, or do whatever the fuck you want. I don't really care. And as always, people, keep kicking ass, and I'll see you in the future. Bye!